Good morning. It is 9 a.m. and I will call to order the February 16th, 2021 meeting of the Saline County Board of Commissioners. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Chadwick?
Here.
Commissioner Sparks?
Here.
Commissioner Vidrickson?
Here.
Commissioner Weef?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. At this time, if everyone could make sure that all microphones and phones and other electronic devices are muted when you are not speaking so that remote observers can hear the proceedings clearly. I would appreciate it. Now, if Brad, our IT director, could instruct everyone on how to raise their hand during the meeting. Brad?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Assuming that most participants in the meeting are using the Zoom client, when you select the participants icon at the bottom of the screen, in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, that will display a raise hand function. If you select that and raise your hand, that will indicate to the host that you would like to speak. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. And at this time, I'd like to call on Phil Smith-Haynes, our county administrator. He has a little information on the blackouts here in the county. Good morning, Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have been advised this morning that Evergy will be continuing with rolling blackouts to deal with the electric situation that's been generated by the cold snap. If that happens and we lose the ability to Zoom this meeting, the meeting will end for lack of a quorum, and then we will attempt to reschedule the balance of the agenda for later in this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. And thank you, Brad, and for your information there on the tuning in here. At this time, we will move into our citizens input portion of the meeting where citizens may speak on county government, usually limited to 3 minutes and pertaining to items not on today's agenda. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the commission at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a hand raised. I will ask Jessica to unmute and speak to the commission.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Sean Kindlesbarger, and this is my wife Jessica, and we're on here this morning to try to get have you guys reconsider the location of one of the communication towers. The county is putting up for the new communication system that is located right adjacent to our piece of land just south of Brookville. I'd emailed everybody a letter last week. I'm not sure if you got it. I think it was late Friday afternoon when I got it out, kind of giving a rundown of the situation.
Yes. And for people's information, and I got a call from, I talked to Jessica quite a while back, and anyway, and talked to the people here in regards to why, what, where. And I understand, and I drove out there that same afternoon. I got off the phone and see, and my first concern is that, hey, with all the engineering that's went into this project, is it really, first off, one of the top priorities of places to install the tower, and for just the benefit of the whole county and all the 911 and everything else that's going on here. And so that was the issue there. That was like our first concern was, is this a priority place to put it? Yes. Mm-hmm. So anyway, but go ahead with your information that you'd like to discuss.
Okay. Well, we're concerned about our property value there.
I have several leading experts that are willing to not only come forth but put together letters. The impact of that on the value of our home, looking at 20 to 25%. Our most recent appraisal came in at about 780. So we're looking at several $100,000 in detriment to us and the lack of value with that that particular type of client that's looking for a home of that nature. I mean, had we known this in advance, we probably never would have built right there, especially a home of that nature.
And if everybody's not aware, this is approximately just a little under 600 feet from our house where this tower's going.
I mean, we would openly invite you to come out just if you wanted to see the site for yourself. It is right. It is not far outside our bedroom window, of which we've built a large deck that overlooks the views of that side of the hill. The tower will be seen from inside our home. It will obviously be seen immediately coming down our drive. It's a big impact to us, a big impact. And we were more than willing to, and had offered in a meeting several other locations. I mean, within reasonable, similar elevations, similar access on other parts of our ground that wouldn't be such an impact to our property value in particular, something out of sight, not right outside our door.
And looking through all the ordinances that affect towers in Saline County, on this little tiny narrow piece of land, almost all of them go against putting a 300-foot tower on. Location within a half mile of any residential area, being the city of Brookville, is 2,000 to the first house in Brookville. It's a little over 2,100 feet, so less than a half a mile. 600 feet from our house, approximately 600 feet from our other house to the south of that we own, and our neighbor to the northeast of us, it's approximately 1,000 feet from his house. So there's a lot of, it's not just our house, it's going to affect several other properties, one of which we own, and a couple of which other people own. And when you look at the ordinances, almost every one of them are stacked against this piece of land. Really, the only advantage I see to the county is the fact that they own the land. And if you know any history about this, when we purchased this place, we thought this was part of our land. Our driveway was approved to go across it and everything when we got a permit to build. I don't even think the county knew that you guys owned it until a couple of years after we'd drawn a permit and moved in and built a house.
Yes, and I know at this point in time right now that it's still under discussion, and I know that our attorney has looked at it and looking at different options, and we're looking at different sites and different ways to go at other costs involved to the county. So okay. I know at this time it's not a hey, here it's cut and dry type of thing. I think it's still in discussion of where, what, and when. Okay. So I would, at this point in time right now, I would just sit back and say, hey, let's wait till all the bells and whistles are cleared to see where and what that's happened here. So, and I have not discussed it with our a county attorney or anything. So or even here. So it's like it's been a while. So it's been discussed.
We actually did. Our attorney that we've been working with did receive correspondence from the county attorney stating that you were moving forward and offering us $2,500 in compensation to do so, and that our driveway was in violation, and that we were trespassing. It was very, very openly stated. It wasn't like a kind of we have documentation of the approved driveway when we built the driveway. He also proceeded to state that $2,500 was more than enough compensation, considering we were in Brookville, Kansas, and that would not be of value any higher than that. And
I'm not pertinent to that information right at this time, so I don't have any clue what we're discussing here. So, okay.
Will the county, is the county going to get a hold of us before they proceed? This was just last week when we got this letter that said that the county was proceeding with this, and I assume this will have to have a conditional use permit for it, because it doesn't meet any of the requirements for that piece of land. And I don't believe any of our neighbors, adjacent landowners to this, have even been notified of this. None of them even knew anything about it until we told them about it.
Okay. what I would say at this time, and I know we're getting past this 3 minutes, but it's like, what I would say right now is that when we get done with this meeting, and I'll get with Hannah Stanball and Phil Smith Haynes and our administrator and find out kind of where we're at and located, and we'll be getting in touch with you. Well, I'm sure that they will be getting in touch with you, because this has been an ongoing situation.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
But thank you for your bringing that to our attention again.
All right,
Thank
thank you
you.
for your time this morning.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, it's Bob Hendrickson. I have a question. It goes back a couple, 3 or 4 years, but was that land offered to the Kindlespargers to purchase at one time? Does anyone know the answer to that question?
We received a letter from the county attorney offering for purchase. We responded back and said, yes, we were interested. Please let us know what you wanted for that. He had stated that if he had it his way, he would just deed the property back over at no fee, but that it needed to be discussed with all of you. And then that was the last we heard of it.
Do you recall how long ago that was?
I have the letter,
It was, I
actually.
can tell you here. Not just there. Right here it is. The first letter I got from, or the only letter I got from him was March 16th of 2018.
Okay, thank you.
And that was one stating that they were interested in selling it to us. And then I had contacted him and he'd said, get back with you, and I never heard anything back, and it just
Fell to
one
the
of those-
wayside.
And at that time, you did say that you were interested in purchasing the property?
Very
Sure.
much so. At the time fenced, we were grazing it. We just pulled cattle this fall. Yeah, we had been grazing it. It had been fenced, and fencing had been up for, from what we understood from the road crew, fencing had been up for what, 80 years or so over the course of time.
The fence I replaced had been there for a long, long time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Weiss here. I really would like to see this go to a study session with us as soon as possible. There's some information that the Kindlespargers have brought forward that I was unaware of, and I would like to discuss them with planning and zoning and with the deputy administrator and the administrator and the commission itself. Is that possible?
Yes, I think we need to do that, and as soon as possible. So we'll get with administrator to see if we can get that on next week's, probably have a study session on that. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Kindlesparger. Thank you for your time. Any other questions by any commissioners? All right. This time, if no one else has any information or discussion, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And this time the consent agenda is approval of prior minutes and approval of tax roll adjustments, approval of accounts payable and payroll, and approval of public forum agenda. Are there any commissioners who wish to add or delete items from the consent agenda? Hearing no objection, the consent agenda will stand as approved. Next item, we will move into the action items.
Item number 1, letter of appointment to Ohio Township Board with Jamie Doss, County Clerk.
Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today I have before you an appointment for Jason Kern for the Ohio Township Clerk position. He's been on the board for a while. He was trustee originally, but didn't run in this last election. But he has offered to take over the clerk position that is currently vacant.
Okay. And reading this, I think you'd be a great addition to it. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners? Any members of the public who wish to speak? Hearing none, I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move
we appoint, oh, go ahead, Bob, I'm sorry.
this is Mr. Vidrickson. I move that we appoint Jason Kern as clerk of the Ohio Township Board.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Are there any further comments? Hearing none, I will call for a vote on approving Jason Kern as clerk to the Ohio Township Board. Commissioner White,
Aye.
Commissioner Weiss,
Aye.
Commissioner Vidrickson,
Aye.
Commissioner Shadwick,
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next item, I'm sorry.
RFA 126-21, Sheriff's Office Bargaining Unit, FOP 2021 to 2022 Amendment MOU with Marilyn Leamer, Human Resources Director.
Good morning, Marilyn.
Good morning, Commissioners. This request is due to us experiencing a vast challenge with hiring and retaining corrections officers. We are currently short 11 officers. Our advertising efforts have included newspaper, radio, TV, billboards, social media, various recruiting sites and resources in colleges with criminal justice type degrees. Some of our positions have been sitting vacant for 6 months, so we are experiencing positions vacant much longer in corrections officer than any other position within Saline County. We currently filled a position in late January that was vacated back in July of 2020, so it did sit vacant for quite a while. On October 27, 2020, we signed an agreement for wages for 2021. And then in January of this year, we did receive a request from FOP, or the Fraternal Order of Police, to negotiate for 2022. And as a result of that negotiations, we are bringing before you a memorandum of understanding reflecting the following for the Sheriff's Office Bargaining Unit, FOP, in an effort to combat the hiring and retention crisis that we're going through at this time, and then also to be a little bit more competitive. The amendment is for the 2023 agreement to implement a 2-grade increase for all positions covered by this bargaining unit, effective April 5, 2021. In exchange, we would delay the $500 one-time payment that is currently scheduled for December 2021, and we would move that to July 2022. This would bring the base starting salary for corrections officer from $15 an hour to $16.35 per hour for those entry-level officers. The FOP did request to eliminate the corrections officer $1,500 hiring incentive in lieu of this above proposal, with the exception of those that were recently recruited or hired into that program. The county would like to retain this incentive for the time being to better attract corrections officer applicants during this hiring and retention crisis. The alternatives for action is to sign the memorandum of understanding, do not sign the memorandum of understanding, or direct staff to renegotiate. Our recommendation is to sign the memorandum of understanding. The 2021 budget impact to this is an additional $140,000, $384 for the 2-grade increase for the covered positions. In addition, another $66,820 in eligible anniversary step increases during the remainder of 2021, and then an additional $40,239 in benefit expenses for a total estimated expense of $247,443. The majority of the funding would come from the current vacancies that are estimated at $115,200 in salaries, $22,372 in benefits, and then the $42,500 by deferring the $500 payment for 2022 for a total of $180,072. That does have a deficit of $67,371. that would first be funded by additional possible sheriff's office turnover vacancies. And then there would be sufficient budget authority that would exist in the general courthouse budget to cover the overage if needed. And I am available for questions.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners at this time?
This is Commissioner Vidrickson, and I would state that I'm in favor of this for a couple of reasons. Number one, these positions we've had a difficult time filling the positions, and I think if we were to really check into it further, it's a dangerous situation over there to be understaffed, and I think Maryland has documentation on injuries and things like that that are going on. And further, I mean, I want the pay to be equal to what that job is, and it obviously we've been a little bit short in that regard for some time now. So I would like to get that. I would like to see this pass.
Thank you, Commissioner Vidrickson. Any other commissioners?
Commissioner Weiss here. I concur with Commissioner Vidrickson. I think that position has been underpaid for a while, and the trouble that we've had in filling those positions and getting staffing up where it belongs has been going on for quite a while. And I feel it's time that we make some type of movement to correct this problem and to get the pay at least equal to or better than surrounding counties.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners? Any members of the public who wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, nobody has their hand raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Chairman, I move, this is Commissioner Shadwick, I apologize. Mr. Chairman, I move we approve by signature the 2021-2022 SO Bargaining Unit FOP amendments as presented by
Commissioner Vidrickson, and I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA 126-21 Sheriff's Office Bargaining Unit FOP 2021-2022 Amendment MOU. Are there any further comments? If not, I will call for a vote. Commissioner White.
Aye.
Commissioner Weiss.
Aye.
Vidrickson.
Aye.
Commissioner Shadwick.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks. Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Next item.
Item number 3, RFA 124-21, bid award for 2021 chemical purchase with David Flaherty II, weed supervisor.
Good morning, David.
Good morning, commissioners. Today I'm here on a request for action for 2021 chemical purchases. The Noxious Weed Department is seeking approval to award bids for 2021 chemical purchases. Bids were opened Friday, February 5th at 11 a.m. 2021. A total of 3 bids were received. Alternative actions, we can accept the bids as indicated in the staff recommendation. We can reject the bids. Staff recommends awarding Van-D Supply Company the bid for all 2021 chemical purchases. While the amount of each chemical is in an estimation based upon prior usage, by accepting their bid, the unit prices are valid through March 2022, should more of any one chemical need to be purchased. Van-D has supplied chemicals to Saline County since 2016. Since that time, Van-D has had a good record of performance with us. The Noxious Weed Department has never incurred their $30 delivery fee due to the department always ordering more than $500 in chemical at any one time to qualify for free delivery. Even though the other 2 vendors have a few cheaper unit prices, Van-D has the overall lowest cost for our minimum amount ordered. If the department would order from the cheapest unit price of each chemical, delivery fees would occur more often, resulting in higher overall cost. Our chemical is purchased for the use by the county for weed control on county properties and right-of-ways. Chemical purchased is also sold to the public. Our budget impact, $104,000 was budgeted in 2021 for the purchase of chemicals. The total expenditures will be determined by the actual amount of each chemical that will be purchased through November of 2021. I'm open for questions if you have any.
David, this is Commissioner Vidrickson. And you mentioned that overall, that Van Dyst had the cheapest total
Yeah.
bid, but in the sheet that I'm looking at, okay, I'm sorry, I've looked at the wrong column. They're at 37,756. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that answers my question right there. Thank you.
Yes, any other comments? Any members of the public who wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, no one has their hand raised at this time.
Okay, I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Vidrickson, and I move that we award the bid for 2021 noxious weed chemical purchase to Van Dyst Supply Company as presented by staff.
Commissioner Shadwick, second.
Are there any other comments? We have, it has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA 124-21 bid award for 2021 chemical purchase. Are there any further comments? If not, I will call for a vote. Commissioner White.
Aye.
Commissioner Weiss.
Aye.
Commissioner Vidrickson.
Aye.
Commissioner Shadwick.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks. Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Next item.
Item number 4, RFA 125-21, Spring 2021 Sheltering Memorandum of Understanding with Kansas Division of Emergency Management. Michelle Barkley, Emergency Management Director.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Commission. I am here this morning to request entering into a spring of 2021 sheltering MOU with KDEM to cover the public assistance for the sheltering. A little background on this MOU is that we entered one in the fall of 2020 for both universities when we found out that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is responsible for public assistance, released some sheltering guidance saying that colleges and universities were on their own for providing shelter. During that time period, there was a little gray area and we weren't entirely sure what was going on, so the county stepped up to ensure that everyone had a safe place to isolate and quarantine, and we utilized the MOU that we have with Webster for sheltering during a disaster. We have several of those, however, Webster's the only one that is a COVID appropriate shelter. So entering in this MOU allows for the state to do the paperwork for public assistance for the sheltering that the county is doing. The state is already doing the paperwork for the Best Western that we have here, as it is a state-run shelter. So they would just be taking on the responsibility of doing the paperwork half for the sheltering for Webster, and then through this MOU would be reimbursing the county back for their expenses. Something that has changed since I was here last with an MOU, on July 21st of 2021, President Biden issued an MOU basically increasing the public assistance program from only covering 75% federally to covering 100% for all Category B expenses. So there is still some clarification we're needing because according to the documentation, sheltering isn't explicitly listed out in a Category B, but I was insured by the state that they were thinking that it was going to be. It's just a matter of time. So as it sits now, unlike other disasters, all expenses that we utilize and then go through public assistance will be 100% reimbursed by the federal government. Are there any questions? I know this is confusing.
No, I don't have any. That's pretty to the point. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners? Hearing none, are there any members of the public who wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, no one has their hand raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move, this is Commissioner Shadwick, and I move we approve by signature the KDEM Spring 2021 Sheltering Memorandum of Understanding.
Commissioner Vidrickson, and I will second that motion.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA 125-21 Spring 2021 Sheltering Memorandum of Understanding with Kansas Division of Emergency Management. Are there any further comments? If not, I will call a vote. Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Weiss?
Aye.
Commissioner Vidrickson?
Aye.
Commissioner Shadwick?
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks? Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next item.
Item number 5, RFA 120-21, 2021 Federal Fund Exchange Agreement with Justin Mater, County Engineer.
Good morning, Justin.
Good morning, Commissioners. So I'm here this morning to approve the 2021 Federal Fund Exchange Agreement. This is with the Kansas Department of Transportation. Saline County will be receiving $271,612.60 in federal funds for the 2021 fiscal year. This agreement converts those federal funds at a 90-10 exchange rate for a total exchange of $244,451.34. Once the funds are converted, they can be used by Saline County for any transportation-related expense. Alternatives for action is to, number 1, sign the agreement that converts the funds to state dollars, which will make the funds available to Saline County through a transportation reimbursement program. The second alternative is to not sign the agreement and leave the dollars as federal funds. Then these funds can be used through a federally funded project procedure through KDOT. Staff recommends to exchange the federal funds by signing the agreement. Exchanging the funds will provide $244,451.34 for any type of transportation-related project. Engineering would like to use these funds to expand our 2021 asphalt road maintenance program. And so this would be your overlays, chip seals, crack seals, and aggregate shouldering. So are there any questions?
Justin, this is Commissioner Vidrickson, and I'm trying to find, and it says a 100% federal share. So is this the same fund that last year I think we traded 75 cents on the dollar or 90 cents on the dollar or whatever it was? Is this the same program?
Yeah, this is the same program. Last year was 90 cents on the dollar. I believe it was 3, if not 4 years ago, it did drop to a 75% exchange rate. And then that was just for 1 year, and then they bumped it up to 90%. And so, yeah, this is something that we do every year.
But this year, what is the percentage this year? Is it the 100%?
No, it's the 90%.
It's still at 90%. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? Any members of the public who wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, no one has their hand raised at this time.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Brad. I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bob Vidrickson. And I move we approve by signature the 2021 Federal Fund Exchange Agreement as presented by staff.
Commissioner Shadwick, and I second.
Are there any further comments? It's been moved and seconded that we approve RFA 120-21 for the year 2021 Federal Fund Exchange Agreement. Are there any further comments? If not, I will call for the vote. Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Weiss?
Aye.
Commissioner Hendrickson?
Aye.
Commissioner Shadwick?
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Item number 6, RFA 121-21, bid award for mower deck with Darren Fischel, Road and Bridge Administrator.
Good morning, Darren. Are we there, Darren?
This is RFA is for the purchase of one new mower deck that was let out for bid according to county policy 40-32. Bids were sent to 3 dealers and we received 2 bids. One from Can Equip, Saline, Kansas for $17,100. One from Prairie Land Partners, Abilene, Kansas for $17,300. The alternatives for action would be to accept the bid from Can Equip in the amount of $17,100. Accept the bid from Prairie Land Partners in the amount of $17,300. 3, rebid the equipment, or 4, reject all bids. Staff recommends accepting the bid from Can Equip, Saline, Kansas in the amount of $17,100. The equipment they bid meets all specifications. It is the same brand and model of our current mower inventory, which means the spare parts and tires we currently carry are interchangeable. These are Land Pride mowers manufactured here in Saline. It has been the goal of this department to turn over mowers on a regular basis to improve the resale value of the equipment instead of spending more money on worn out, outdated equipment. This replaces a 2005 Land Pride mowing deck that will be sold on Purple Wave. The delivery date's expected in June 2021. The budget impact is the money will be used from our 011 capital outlay line item in the 2021 Road and Bridge budget. There, we budgeted $20,000 for this item. We currently have an unencumbered balance of $154,165. This purchase price of $17,100 will leave a balance of $137,065.
Thank you, Darren. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? Any members of the public who wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, no one has their hand raised at this time.
Okay, I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Commissioner Shadwick, Mr. Chairman, I move we award the bid to Can Equip in the amount of $17,100 on new mower deck, funded by staff.
And this is Commissioner Hendrickson. I will second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve RFA-121-21 bid award for mower deck in the amount of $17,100. And are there any further comments? If not, we'll call for the vote. Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Weiss?
Aye.
Commissioner Hendrickson?
Aye.
Commissioner Shadwick?
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next item.
Item number 7, RFA 122-21, bid award for Assistant Superintendent truck with Darren Fischel, Road and Bridge Administrator.
Good morning again, Darren.
Again. This RFA is for the purchase of one new 2021 half-ton extended cab four-wheel drive assistant superintendent truck that was let out for bid according to county policy 4032. We received 2 bids. One from Home Automotive of Saline, Kansas for $32,914.34. One from Long MacArthur Ford, Saline, Kansas for $34,172.28. The alternatives for action would be to accept the bid from Home Automotive, accept the bid from Long MacArthur, or reject bids and direct staff to an alternate course of action. Staff recommends accepting the bid from Home Automotive. This truck will replace a 2012 Ford F-150 half-ton extended cab four-wheel drive with 190,000 miles used by the administrator. The new truck will go to the assistant superintendent, whose current truck is a 2014 Ford with 122,000 miles. His truck will then rotate to the administrator to extend the life of the truck. The budget impact is money will be used from the 011 capital outlay line item in the 2021 road and bridge budget. This purchase is in lieu of a Cruise six-pack truck we had $65,000 budgeted for. We committed part of those dollars for the purchase of the 2021 motor graders. This required us to shift equipment purchases between years because we had overspent a little on what we had figured the motor graders would cost. That didn't leave enough in the line item to purchase that truck. So our unencumbered balance in this line item is $137,165. The purchase price of the truck of $32,914.34 would leave a balance of $104,150.66.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions, comments from commissioners?
Mayor, and this Commissioner Weiss, how far out, how long is this bid good for?
You know, I believe it's 60 days. And so we've had it probably 3 weeks now, so end of March, I believe.
This is Commissioner Vidrickson. Is this truck in stock?
No, it is not. It would be probably deliveries usually 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Weiss, so one more time, and maybe the administrator can answer some of these questions, but we still have an unresolved issue with, as it relates to possibly going to a lease type program. Would we have that information in front of us where we could make that decision before moving forward with this and still have the bid available?
Through the chair, County Administrator Phillips McCain, I would hope that we would have information on leasing programs by the middle of March, but you know, that's subject to whatever your commission decides to do with that information. That might not be the end of the process. I do know that not all road and bridge vehicles were intended for that program. Darren, I think, had selected 3, correct me if I'm wrong, Darren, vehicles. So there's not necessarily a need to delay this in order to still take advantage of a potential leasing program.
Okay, Commissioner Weiss, I appreciate that clarification.
That was one of the same thoughts that I had. So thank you, Phil, for taking care of that. And thank you, Commissioner Weiss, for bringing that to our attention again. So are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? Any members of the public who wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, no one has their hand raised at this time.
Okay, thank you, Brad. I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
This is Commissioner Vidrickson. Before I make a motion, I would just like to say that I'm happy to see that we have 2 bids on this. I know the last time or two we've only had 1 bid on some of this stuff, so I guess my comment would be welcome Home Automotive to the arena of bidding on county equipment, and a big thank you to Long MacArthur, who is a longtime bidder and bids every time, and we appreciate their interaction with us also. But that having been said, Mr. Chairman, I move we award the bid for a 2021 pickup to home automotive in the amount of $32,914.34 as presented by staff.
Commissioner Shadwick, second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve RFA 122-21 bid award for Assistant Superintendent truck. Are there any further comments? If not, I'll call for a vote. Commissioner White.
Aye.
Commissioner Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Bedrickson.
Aye.
Mr. Shadwick.
Aye.
Mr. Sparks. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next item.
Item number 8, RFA 123-21, bid award for heavy haul equipment trailer with Darren Fishel, Road Bridge Administrator.
Good morning again, Darren.
Yeah, Brad has some pictures. Brad has some trailer pictures I'd like to put up. This is for the purchase of one new sliding axle tilt trailer to haul heavy equipment that was let out for bid in accordance with the Saline County 4032 procurements purchasing contracts. We received 2 bids, one from Landau Company of Marysville, Kansas for $74,377.90. They also quoted an optional 20,000 pound winch instead of a 10,000 pound winch, which was $78,177.90. We also got a bid from Westmark from Ceres, California for $81,125. The alternatives for action would be accept the bid from Landau in the amount of $78,177.90 with the high capacity winch. Accept the bid from Landau in the amount of $74,377.90 with the low capacity winch. 3, accept the bid from Westmark in the amount of $81,125 with a low capacity winch. 4, reject all bids, rebid, or direct staff to an alternative. Brad, could you go to the second picture? Staff recommends accepting the bid from the Landau LLC in the amount of $78,177.90 for the sliding axle tilt trailer with the 20,000 capacity winch. The trailer is also used for equipment recovery. Could you go to the third picture, Brad? This is a planned addition to our heavy equipment haul inventory. We will now have 2 trailers capable of hauling our heaviest equipment. The budget impact is money will be used from the 011 capital outlay line item in the 2021 road and bridge budget. There is $90,000 budgeted for this item in the 2021 budget. The unencumbered balance is $104,150.66. This purchase price of $78,177.90 would leave a balance of $25,972.76.
Hey, Darren, are there any questions or comments from the commissioners?
Commissioner Weiss here. I got a couple questions, Darren. How many days a week are you currently using that trailer that you now have?
We use it every day of the week. Well, you know, I'm not going to say right now in the 0 degree temperatures, but that trailer gets used by multiple crews multiple times a day, sometimes. But it gets used every day of the week.
And the reason for an additional trailer is something isn't happening because that trailer is being used? Is that what you're telling us?
It is. You know, there's 2 things that drive this addition, Mr. Weiss. One is when that trailer breaks down, we have no way to haul our heaviest of equipment. And 2, it makes us more flexible. So one crew doesn't have to wait for a truck to get freed up and truck and trailer to get freed up in order to move. That has we have two crews that have excavators that weigh 40,000 plus, and we only have one trailer that can haul that type of equipment. So there are times then it becomes that they have to move around frequently, and wait. I'll give an example, the flood of 2019, you know, because of the damage and the way things were moving around, we would have been a little bit, it would have helped to have another trailer to move.
And do you have two tractors to pull the trailers, or would there have to be an expensive another tractor?
We need to rebuild one tractor we have. We purchased a new one last year, and then we had one rebuilt, and we kept the old tractor with anticipation of rebuilding it this year to match the new trailer.
And my last question, it appears you must have had bid for the low capacity winch on your bids, and that was just an option that Landall put on with the high capacity, is that correct?
Yes.
And do you foresee a need for that 20,000 pound versus the 10,000?
I do. They actually called me about that, and I think we missed that in our bids. I think the minimum capacity should have been 20,000.
Thank you, Darren.
Darren, I have a quick question. This is Commissioner Sparks. On that capacity, on that 20,000 pounds, and you just made a statement, it's like, let's step back and say your excavator, it was 40,000 pounds and it went dead. How would a 20,000 pound winch pull a 40,000 pound up on this trailer?
You're not going to recover an excavator with that.
Oh,
that's
okay.
That's more for motor graders, mowers, and trucks.
Gotcha. No matter what the weight is, they can roll a little easier.
Yes.
Yes, gotcha. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Any members of the public who wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, nobody has their hand raised at this time.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Commissioner Shadwick and Mr. Chairman, I move we award the bid for the new trailer as presented by staff, Landall Company, in the amount of $78,177.90.
This is Commissioner Vidrickson, and I will second the motion.
Okay, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA-123-21 bid award for heavy haul equipment trailer. Are there any further comments? If not, I'll call for a vote. Commissioner White.
Aye.
Commissioner Weiss.
Aye.
Commissioner Vidrickson.
Aye.
Commissioner Shadwick.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you, commissioners.
Next item.
Item number 9, review of amendment number 1 to resolution 20-2297, review of section 6 mask mandate with Jason Tiller, Health Department Director.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Jason.
Just as soon as Brad gets the presentation up here. All right, so this is the COVID update for February 16th. Next slide, please. As we are kind of hitting through several firsts in the next couple of months, it was February 11th that the WHO named it as actually COVID-19. So that's a little piece of your COVID history to start this one off. Next slide. All right, looking at the U.S. Picture, we can see that U.S. cases are down in the last 2 weeks from the previous 2 weeks, which is a good sign. There was a slight increase in deaths from the previous 2 weeks, but as it follows that 2 weeks for cases, 2 weeks for hospitalizations, potentially 2 weeks for death, that's not to be unexpected. Next slide, please. All right, here's our state of Kansas update. I think that is probably one of the lowest 2 week case updates for the state that I have seen in the last several months as well, with 10,000 new cases in the last 2 weeks. Next slide. For the Saline County overview, we are sitting at 5,800 cases. the big thing I want to make a note of and point out here is that after several weeks of the hospital being inundated with COVID patients, as of yesterday, they were down to 8 patients in the hospital, which is, I think, the lowest number we've seen of COVID patients in the hospital probably since October. So again, you know, all the indicators are really looking better as we're moving forward. Next slide. Same thing with cases in Saline County. You can see here that our case numbers for the month of February are about 292, much lower, you know, for the mid-month point than what we experienced even last month. So again, trending in the right direction. Next slide. Same with deaths. We've only had 3 this month, in the month of February. Again, trending in the right direction. Next slide. Clusters still continue, and some of that is just from the extent of dealing with those clusters and whether there's another case associated with it. My hope, though, that as we are now really drawing down on cases, that we'll be able to start closing out some of these clusters that may have been sitting in the state system for a little bit. Excuse me, next slide. For testing, so testing is still occurring, and at the Church of the Cross with Well Health, and as I've said in the past, you can go to the website gogettested.com to find a time and get registered if you want to be tested. In the month of January, there were some testing events that still occurred. One of the questions that comes up is, are the numbers that we're seeing of cases going down because cases are going down or because there's less testing? And I think there's a little bit of both there. Even though there is less testing that's been happening, there's also been a decline in demand for testing outside of going to your provider. But one of the things in looking at the results, or the batch results coming from Well Health and from CRL, which is the lab that was running the test for some of the other mass testing clinics last month, is that even with a decrease in demand for testing, the percentage of results coming out of those batches of results were much smaller too. So in the neighborhood of less than 10% of all the results were coming back positive. So that's a good sign for as we're moving forward into the end of winter and into spring. Next slide. So vaccine updates, this is probably still what most people want to know about. These are our current phase 2 priorities. We've reached that 30% of those over 65. And so we're working through first responders, K through 12 staff and childcare workers, those that are city and county and critical infrastructure. And again, if you fall into a phase 2 category, which later on is the definition and breakdown of that category, and you have not registered yet and you want to get vaccinated, please go to the vaccinatesalinecountyks.com and get vaccinated. One other thing as well is on that website, when you get called for your appointment, you can go to that website and print off your consent paperwork that you need to fill out prior to going there. Now, if you don't have the paperwork prior to showing up for your appointment, that's fine. You can fill it out on site. That's not an issue. But this helps speed things up if you have it filled out already ahead of time. If you want to see how we stack up week to week about how much vaccine we are receiving compared to other counties, the kansasvaccine.gov website has that comparison week to week about how much each county is being allocated. On the horizon, though, the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a 1-dose vaccine that goes up to the in front of the FDA on the 26th to be reviewed. And then some weeks after that, if it's approved, we could start seeing that as an additional available option besides the Pfizer and the Moderna. I don't have much information about what kind of requirements they may have, if they decide that they are going to direct it to specific types of groups or whatever the case may be. But just know that there is that on the horizon for another option or another tool in this fight moving forward to combat COVID. Next slide. So I also wanted to kind of mention a minute, because there are vaccine that has been coming into the county in more than one way. One of them was the National Pharmacy Program for Long-Term Care. That was the vaccine that was coming from the federal administration down to the nursing homes through CVS and Walgreens. And most of those have already received both their first and second shots. So that one is pretty much complete. The bulk of our vaccine right now is coming from allocations from KDHE to local health departments. And that is the current supply that we are using to give to people at the joint vaccination clinic at the JCPenney building. And then there's also the new stream that is the federal retail pharmacy program. Right now in the area, 2 of the local Dillons are part of that. They are only doing over 65. I think they are maybe getting about 100 per week potentially. But if somebody over 65 wants to try and register that way to get their vaccine, the website is listed right here. And from what we are being told, the feds intend to bring more pharmacies over time to this program, such as Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, and several other chains. The one thing to keep in mind about both the National Pharmacy Program for Long-Term Care and the Federal Retail Pharmacy Program is that those are coming from federal allotments of vaccine and do not impact the allotment that we receive. So that's in addition to what we are already getting. So like this week, we got 900 doses to be able to give, and then whatever the 2 Dillon's pharmacies get is on top of that. So that's a bonus for our community, and it also puts us a little bit further ahead at trying to get everybody vaccinated. Which, as of Friday, we have had over 5,500 people that have received either one or both vaccines. And like I said, we have 900 scheduled for this week, and we have 900 new ones scheduled for next week. And one of the things I really want to point out is that is going to be about 15% of the adult population that's been vaccinated. But more importantly, is that will now, there will be more people that have received one or both doses of vaccine that have had COVID in the county since the beginning of the pandemic. So that's just something that we want to be able to celebrate. And again, bright lights looking forward as far as maybe one day getting out of this pandemic and everything else. Next slide. So if people are looking for where to find where vaccine is being given at, this is for information. So on the kansasvaccine.gov website, excuse me, is this new tool that KDHE has built. It's called Find My Vaccine. Whether they're looking to see if there's vaccine here or somewhere else around the state, this screenshot shows that you can be able to look at an area, say within 50 miles or 5 miles or 10 miles or wherever you're at, see what places are providing vaccine, and what information and how to register for vaccine at that site. This is still something that's new that they have been developing, so that there are still some sites that may be giving vaccine that aren't on here yet, such as the 2 Dillons are not on this site yet and clickable. However, I expect as other pharmacies come on board, we will see that showing up on there. Next slide. So probably one of the things that everybody should be excited about is, do you have to quarantine after you are fully vaccinated? And the answer is no, you do not. Provided you meet these criteria, so that you've had both vaccines and it's with 2 weeks after your second dose. That means that you're fully vaccinated. You're exposed to somebody with COVID-19 within 3 months of your last dose, and you have remained asymptomatic since that exposure. KDHE is updating their guidance now to match that. If you want to read more about it, the link is listed down there below. But if anything, if somebody was wondering whether they should get vaccinated or not, this is a good incentive because then you don't have to worry about quarantine after the fact. Next slide. So I left these next couple of slides in here. It just breaks down again the vaccination phases. And we are in phase 2 and probably will be in phase 2 for quite a while. There's a lot of people that fall into that phase. Next slide. And again, these definition slides are just there for information. These are what congregate settings, and we'll be working down through them eventually. Next slide. The high contact critical workers. Next slide. And if you want to know where to find information, okay, we've got several places for you to be able to do that. The newsletters, the Vax Facts that goes out, KSAL, KINA. We're putting up all kinds of stuff on our social media routinely. We filmed the second installment of FAQ Friday the other day, and it's up on the YouTube page on Media Connection. And of course, the Saline.org coronavirus page has links on there as well. And as always, if this doesn't solve the question that you're looking for or doesn't answer it, then please reach out to us and we'll try to get those questions answered for you. You can reach out through email or directly through Facebook or one of those social media avenues. Next slide. So to the major unknown still is the COVID variants. You may have seen the news report yesterday about the second case of the UK variant that has been found in the state in Sedgwick County. And that UK variant is that B117 that you see up there at the top, which has now been reported in 40 states. And that's really the unknown thing that we're watching right now. We really don't know how that's going to impact things. A recent article from the CDC mentioned that the UK variant could be the predominant variant floating around or in circulation by March. But there's just not a lot of additional information yet as far as how that's circulating and if there are more cases, which I suspect there probably are, but that information is still limited because they are only doing genetic sequencing on a small sample of tests that are sent to KDHE. So as that continues to change, we'll be continuing to watch that and put that information into our overall decision making. Next slide. Some of you also may have heard talk about double masking. So I've provided some information up here about some reasons why the CDC talks about double masking for improved fit or improved filtration, depending on the type of mask that you're using. There is a link there to the study that this information came from, if you want to read further into it. Additionally, at the bottom of that slide is a link to the CDC page where this information came from, which also goes into some more detailed information about how to properly wear your mask, the different types of masks, and those types of things. We are not planning to pursue anything about double masking as far as within our mask orders right now. I think we just need to continue focusing on everybody masking and masking properly. And then this is an additional option for those who feel like they need it at this point. Next slide. So that concludes the COVID update for February 16th. And I will, if there are any questions.
Jason, this is Commissioner Vidrickson, and I had a few questions, but you've pretty well taken care of them. One is left here, though, on when Dillon's and Walgreens, et cetera, and are those closed to out of county, or is there any way to check that, or does that count against our county count, or do they just open it up for anyone, or how does that work?
So the understanding I have right now is that the state has put the primary group, the focus group, was those over 65. The state has not, to the best of my knowledge, made any type of residency requirement. So theoretically, anybody from a neighboring county could register through one of those pharmacies and come get the vaccine. And being that it's a federal program, we don't have very much control over that part of it.
Does that residency restriction also apply for the KDHE? In other words, if someone goes through your organization or through Saline Family Physicians and so forth, and they are not from Saline County, how do we exclude them, or how?
So our primary focus has been those that live and those that work in Saline County. We have a lot of people that work here that may not necessarily live here, but they are important to the infrastructure, and they fall into those groups. When we, on the registration process, if you'll remember, it does ask for their address, and it also asks if they live and work in the county. And that is part of the sorting process when we are going through all of the registrations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Weiss here.
Yes, sir.
I got a couple questions. Do you know do you have a total count of the K through 12 people who would be eligible?
I have an estimate.
Or just get me close.
Let me see here a second. As of last week, it was around 900 K through 12 and child care providers that had registered. Now, I'm sure that there are many more that are eligible that for whatever reason haven't registered. And for that number of K through 12 and child care providers, there were many of them that fell into the over 65, so that doesn't count them because they're already in the primary group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was wanting to know, and I wanted that number also, but I was trying to get wrap my head around how many are eligible, and you don't have that through USD 305 or anything, what their staff would be.
Well, they at one point were trying to collect some of that information, but it wasn't, as far as trying to give us specific numbers per building or anything like that, there wasn't anything that we could do with it. So no, I haven't collected that specific information about how many of them wanted to get vaccinated per school district.
The question wasn't how many wanted to, the question of how many are eligible to.
As far as how many eligible, I don't know. I would have to find out from each school district how many would fall into that eligibility.
And do you know the number of 65 and over who are currently on the list?
Let me see here. I think we still have about, if I'm reading this right, about 3,500 still to get vaccinated.
Okay, and as you go through that phase 2, you have different categories, whether they're K through 12 or over 65 or over or whatever. How do you take a percentage of the doses that are allotted and then dole them out?
Right. So for the current groups right now, like for the ones that we're giving this week, the ones that we're giving next week, we did a 50-50 split. 50% went towards the over 65. About 35%, give or take, went toward that whole K through 12 and child care providers. And then the other 15 to 20% went toward the first responders, fire, law enforcement, those critical city county workers. And then actually we will have probably that same breakdown for the next week. And then as we get through a majority of those groups, we have been talking about how to tackle the rest of the different groups within the breakdown, because they are varying numbers. And so as we get through the next couple of weeks, but we're meeting weekly about how we are, what percentages and how we're trying to get through these, all these different categories.
Okay, with that information then, Jason, if the 900 doses a week hold, and you're giving 30% of that to K through 12, in approximately 3 weeks, you will have K through 12 vaccinated?
Approximately, sir, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions or comments?
Jason, this is Commissioner White.
Yes,
I had the privilege of going out to J.C. Penney's. That was last week, and I was really impressed. Staff was very knowledgeable and explained the process and where to go and what to do. And everybody had such a good attitude, and you could, even though everybody's wearing their mask, you could still see them smiling. So they were enjoying what they were doing, and I want to commend you and your staff and your partners on a well-done clinic.
Well, thank you, sir. I'll pass that along to them.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? So thank you, Jason, for that update.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We do have a hand raised.
Okay.
Lene Meyer?
Yes, Jason, I just wanted to clarify, and I may have missed you saying this, but it's my understanding, or I've read, that even after you've had both vaccines, even though over 2-3 weeks, then you're not having to quarantine, but it's my understanding that we still should be wearing the mask and social distancing when we do go out. Is that correct information? And maybe you said that and I missed it.
No, I didn't, but that is correct, ma'am. Even after being fully vaccinated, you still have to wear a mask, you still need to social distance, and that will probably still go on for quite a while until we get a majority of the population vaccinated.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lene. Any other comments by public?
Mr. Chairman, no one has their hand raised at this time.
Okay. Next item.
Item number 10, public health order with Jason Tiller, Health Department Director.
Good morning, Jason.
Good morning again. So, you saw all the data in the previous presentation. And while I'm confident that we are getting closer to a point, you know, the light is at the end of the tunnel, as we say, but we're not quite to the end of the tunnel yet. I think it would be premature to let our health order expire on February 21st. I do think, though, that we are definitely in a position where we could loosen up some of the restrictions that we've had in the order. So right now, my current thoughts are that to plan to issue another order on February 22nd after the current one expires. But given the improvements that we have seen, raise the mass gathering limit from 15 to 50 individuals, and then also raise the percentage that's listed in section 2, number 5, about auditoriums and exhibit halls, and raise that from 25% of capacity to 50% of capacity. And then have the new order in place for an additional 4 weeks that would expire on March 21st. A couple of additional reasons is that would also give us time to get a greater number of the population vaccinated. If we start to see increases in cases after raising this limit, it's easier to make changes than it is to try and react an entire new piece of health order. And then also to be able to really kind of get a better sense of what's happening with the COVID-19 variants in the state and in the area as well.
Any other comments by commissioners?
Mr. Shadwick here. Jason, would the city have to amend what they have on this mass gathering to do this?
The city didn't enact anything on mass gathering. They had talked about potentially a while back when we thought when I was thinking about letting the previous one expire, but no, with their mask order, it would stay in place, the same with ours, and then they wouldn't have to do anything with the mass gathering.
Okay. Thank you. Any public comment?
Commissioner Vidrickson,
Sorry.
do we need to enact anything here, Jason, or does your authority go beyond what we're talking about here? I mean, be able to just let you issue a health order and that's the end of it? Is that where we go, or because we don't have a
right
RFA or anything?
Right. So under my current authority, I can reissue the health order. Again, the commission, if they decided that they wanted to review, amend, or revoke the health order, then you would call a meeting or add it to your agenda for that additional action.
All right, I see. Has been my position for 4.5 years, or a little over 4 years on the commission. I'm going to continue to take my direction from the health department and the health officials, and if that's your recommendation, I'll hang in there with it.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other comments? Any comments from the public?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a hand raised. Lene Meyer wishes to speak.
Lene, your name and address?
Lene Meyer from Saline, Huntington Road. I just want to say, as a citizen, it scares me that it's increasing from like 25% to 50%. That could mean a lot of people in some facilities, and I think people might be getting. I don't know if they're getting better with wearing masks, but with people not always wearing masks and following the guidelines, it scares me to see that increase at this point. That's just my opinion. My heart kind of jumped when he said that.
Okay. All right, Lene. Well, thank you. Any other public comments?
Mr. Chairman, no one has their hand raised at this time.
Okay. Well, Jason, thank you for your information this morning.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And at this time, we'll move on to informational items.
Item number 1, Health Department update with Jason Tiller, Health Department Director.
Can we get it one more time, Jason?
One more time. This is the last one. Get them all in one morning.
Good.
This update is for the period of August 2020 through February 2021. And of course, although the main focus of pretty much everything that we have done has been COVID response, there have still been some additional things that have gone on. One of those includes the Becoming a Mom program, continuing to offer their proven program to new mothers and to pregnant women and their support persons who are in the midst of trying to navigate pregnancy and a pandemic. Some places, because of challenges, just put their Becoming a Mom program on hold during all of this, but my staff sought out ways to be creative and still be able to meet the needs of their clients. Same thing with child care surveyors. They were able to transition their in-person orientation course to a virtual one, so that didn't create a barrier to those who wanted to open child care. And as you know, child care, not only in the quantity of child care, but quality child care continues to be an issue here in the county and in many places. And so they wanted to ensure that was still available. clinic transition, the flu clinic that we did, to a complete drive-through clinic. And we still ended up giving almost as many flu shots as we normally do between the walk-in and the drive-through. And even with some staff turnover, all staff have stepped up, new and old, just to be able to hop in where they needed to provide help during this COVID situation, volunteer their time, be creative, and be adaptable to the changes that had to take place at different times. As far as the future goes, of course, you know, as we start looking a little bit down the road towards the end of COVID, we'll still be doing case investigations and contact tracings. But we also are looking at how can we now start transitioning sometime in the next few months and start refocusing back on some of the processes and programs that were in place that have been had to be set aside, such as STD screenings and so forth, that we can be able to start doing again. We do have a small but seasoned group of intermittent staff who are doing case investigations, and I think that if things stay as they are currently, then that group will be able to handle most of the investigations, and then permanent staff can be able to start refocusing on the future post-COVID. Of course, in the budget, COVID response has created significant expenditures, but thankfully between COVID grants, the Spark funds, that we were able to cover most of those expenditures. We're also in the process of filling out all of our annual aid to local grant applications through KDHE, and so we'll be submitting those. They're due by March 15th. And then you can see also when we are looking at our current revenue versus expense for the period right now versus where we were last year, our expense is actually about the same. We do have some increase in revenue, and much of that I attribute to grant funding or funds that had come in post as far as reimbursement for expenses. But we are still doing pretty well in our budget to date. With that, if there are any questions over the update.
Any comments from the commissioners or any comments? Well, Jason, thank you for your update there this morning, and look forward to the next month. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen.
Next item.
Item number 2, Livestock and Expo update with Rick Lamer, Director.
Good morning, Mr. Rick Lamer.
Good morning, Commissioners. This update will cover December 2020 through February 2021. Since my last update, we've had 22 event days at the Expo Center and 11 canceled event days. The total events for 2020 at the Expo Center were 131 event days with 94 canceled event days. Project management contract was awarded to Hutton Construction to start off on these improvements at the Expo Center. We have a kickoff meeting with them this Friday, so we're excited to get that moving along. And y'all hired a new Expo Center director, David Flaherty II. Will take over my duties March 20th, as I will be retiring on the 19th. County Weed Department, 12,525.5 acres were aerial sprayed in 2020. Upcoming plans, the Expo Center has 13 event days scheduled for March and 1 cancellation. The Weed Department, David will be following the annual noxious weed management report with the state of Kansas. And County Farm, Oliver Hagg scholarship applications are due March 31st. You can pick up an application from the Expo Center office at 900 Greeley, or go on to the saline.org website and print one of those off. Budget update. Expo Center deposits for rentals in 2020 was $38,995.20. If you want to compare that to last year was just a little over 91,000. So as you can see, we didn't have a whole lot of events. A lot of them were canceled. Our 2020 Expo budget ended at 84.31%. Weed department chemical sales for 2020 totaled $94,686.64. The weed department budget ended at 91.75%. The weed special equipment fund has a balance of $71,258, and the county farm account balance is $195,142.65. So with that, I have a short PowerPoint to show you if you have any questions about this part of it. Next slide, please, Brad. Next slide. So these are food distributions. We're still having one a month. We actually have one scheduled for tomorrow beginning at 9 a.m. Next slide, please. Carol Byer and her group of volunteers do an excellent job of putting this on every month, but the problem tomorrow we're trying to figure out is how to keep them warm. We need some warmer weather. Next, please. Next. Next slide, please. That thing ain't working very well. This was a first congressional GOP meeting. Next, please. Jim Du Bois was one of the hosts to this meeting they had back in December. Next, please. Next. 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 So Bill Fekas Christmas dinner this year, it looked a lot different. It was just pickup only. Next, please. Bill does a great job with his volunteers getting this all put together. Next, please. This is just a shot of them when they started moving all their supplies in. Usually takes them about a week to get everything moved in. Next, please. This is a shot of all the bread that was brought in for this event. Next, please. And this was a shot, once you picked up your dinner, you could go outside and just take whatever milk you wanted to take with you. Next, please. And this is a shot right before they open the doors, getting ready to start their carry out. Next, please. And this is a shot of all the cake and cookies. They had tons of sweet stuff that you could take with you. Next. So this is when the event actually started. They served over 2,000 people. It went off really well, except for a little bit of a phone problem. The phones got overwhelmed with people wanting takeout orders. So next year they're going to try something a little different with cell phones. Next, please. I don't know what's going on with this slideshow. Okay, coming up, Equifest. We're once again proud to be one of the hosts for this event. This will be March 5th through the 7th. They're not having any advanced ticket sales. You will need to go to Tony's Pizza Event Center box office to buy your tickets. Right now, we're in the final planning stages. We're hoping for a lot warmer weather. And this show is not for just people that own horses. They have tons of stuff that would probably interest anybody. Have a lot of new vendors this year, and some of the clinicians that are coming are from last year, but they also have some new ones. They also new this year they'll be having draft horses that will have a farm competition, and they'll have a barrel bash, just to name a few of the newer things that they're having. So we're excited to have this event again. Next, please. This is our calendar for March. Of course, have Equifest, have a new event in 4-H building. It's a vendor fair that I think is primarily crafts, arts and crafts. And this particular gal, she will be having 6 of these shows next year in the 4-H building. We also have the 54th Mid-America Farm Show coming up, the 24th through the 23rd through the 26th or the 25th. So they're just now making final plans for that. So we're glad to start picking up a little over here. So I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rick. Is there any commissioners that have any comments or questions for Mr. Lambert?
Commissioner Weiss here. Rick, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the years of service that you've given to the Expo Center and the job you've done. We're going to sorely miss you and appreciate everything you have done.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Rick. I'm sorry, this will probably be your last update, huh?
This will be my last day. I'd like to say that it's been a pleasure working with the Board of Commissioners, and I'm proud of what we did accomplish. We got the Expo Center lease, the long-term lease, and all of that, and I just appreciate it very much. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Well, you've done a great job.
Thank you.
We look forward to the new director and where we go from here.
Well, you'll be in good hands. I know David will do a great job. So
yes, yeah.
Thank you.
You bet. Well, thank you, Rick. Next item.
Item number 3, environmental health fees with Tim Hamilton, Planning and Zoning Administrator.
Morning, Tim.
Commissioners, this is Deputy County Administrator Hannah Stambaugh. So both Mr. Hamilton and myself will kind of be helping to present this particular information in regards to the environmental health fees. It certainly was a team effort to try to get the information. So I will start out, and certainly Tim is here to help answer any questions too that you might have from the code standpoint. But this is just some information that's being brought to you at your request to talk a little bit more about the current fee structure that is established for septic systems, the history of the fee structure, and then data and some information in regards to some of that work that is performed. So Saline County actually, we employ 2 full-time environmental health sanitarians, and these are the folks that do all the necessary inspections, technical assistance, and design for wastewater systems for both wells and then also septic systems. We also, these 2 gentlemen, perform the work in 4 counties total: Saline County, Ellsworth County, Ottawa County, and Lincoln County. So as you can imagine, they are certainly kept pretty busy. We did do some research and looked into a little bit of the history of the fee structure. And as far as we were able to go back, we were not able to find any information that indicated that there were separate fees from new septic systems versus replacements or repairs to septic systems, lateral lines, or both. So just providing you with that information, also included in this briefing piece of it was a good breakdown that really talked about each county for the last several years, the number of new septic systems, the number of just septic tank replacements, the number of just lateral line replacements, and then the number of both lateral line and tank replacements. And doing all of this information and talking to staff and really understanding a little bit more that goes into their inspections or as well as the replacements are new. What we really found was the time or the amount of time that it takes to do a brand new septic installation is about the same time that it takes to do lateral line type of work. And it just goes back to a lot of the soils that they have to inspect and test and make sure that percolation rates and everything is acceptable for placing a particular system there. With tank replacements, it does take less time, but what we have found is that the number of tanks that are being replaced are also tanks that have been in place for 30 plus years. And we have absolutely no documentation as to where those tanks were placed, how far down deep they were, anything like that. So when they do just tank replacements, they are actually going out and basically, getting all of the data and information necessary so we can properly document that information and put that information with the address file itself. So that just kind of talks about just a little bit of the process piece of it. As far as the fee structure, the fees have not been changed since 2014. And what really kind of came about that was back in, before 2012, many counties would receive grant dollars through the local environmental protection program. Those grant dollars ran out in 2012, so it really made counties really have to look at their fee structure. Prior to 2014 and 2013, both Ottawa County and Ellsworth County had the same fee structure of $300 for, it didn't matter if it was a new septic system or if it was a replacement of any part of the septic system, that was the permit fee. And in Saline County, it was $175, and in Lincoln County, it was $150. Again, in 2014 is when that shift happened with the grant dollars drying up, as well as just a review of making sure that the fee structure was consistent amongst the 4 counties that we did service, and that's when it was raised. For all 4 counties, the fee structure of $300. So we, like I said, we had pulled some information in regards to that. And just from what we can tell, 2014 was also that time frame too when the environmental health sanitarians were as part of the health department. And as you know, back in that time, that was also the transition of the health department becoming a county-only department and not between the city of Salina and Saline County. So there were some changes that were made there too. But in 2014, when they established those fees, it was done basically with a review of personnel costs, all the different continuing education, and licensing for the staff that it's required for them to continue and be kept up to date with all of their credentials, mileage costs, etc., to determine that best fee structure. But there has been no fee increase since 2014 for any of the 4 counties. And as I said before, we did pull the data on septic permits based on just the new septic systems, just replacement of septic tanks, replacement of just lateral lines, and then replacements of both tank and lateral lines. And that information is included in this briefing. We also did some comparison to some other counties, and as far as their fee structure, I will tell you it was quite interesting. It is definitely it is different across the whole entire state. And we tried to pick some counties that were somewhat similar in size, somewhat similar in some of the operation stuff that we do to provide you with some information as far as what they charge for new septic systems. And then if they have a separate fee structure whatsoever for any type of replacement to repair. What we did find was that several of the counties and several of the ones that were listed there, they have got other fees that they charge for that we don't, such as any type of site evaluations. Our site evaluations are included in that $300 permit fee for us to go out and help them with trying to site a good place for either a well or a septic system. We don't charge for the soil profile piece of it or any additional site visits. Those are some of the things that we found that several other counties have a separate fee structure for that. And then just as a note, so we did get a call from McPherson County when we were asking them about their fee structure, and they are actually in the process of reviewing their fee structure to look at some changes or potentially raising that or lowering that. So I hope that the information that we have provided is the information that you all were looking for to look into this just a little bit more. We're certainly, Tim and I are open to any questions that you have or any comments in any direction that you would like staff to move forward with in looking at this even a little bit further.
Well, Hannah, this is Commissioner Vidrickson, and was hoping that we would get Ottawa County, Lincoln County, and those that touch our county, because that seems to be where the complaints are coming from, that we charge a whole lot more than they do. What is our fee to the other counties when we go do this for who? Lincoln County, Ottawa County, Ellsworth County. When we go out there and perform a fee for them, what is our charge to those counties?
So to answer that question, so we did since we are sanitarians or environmental health sanitarians, do the work in Ellsworth, Lincoln, and Ottawa. So that fee for any type of permits in those counties is $300.
Okay. I know that through some investigative work behind the scenes a little bit that there are a lot of people that are not, because of the $300, they're not seeking a permit. How do we take care of that, or what's the penalty for a plumber who goes out and knowingly inserts a septic system and knowing they're supposed to have a permit and they don't have it?
Tim, is that something you could answer through the code?
Well, I can explain that we do have a fine of, I believe it's $50 per day that we can charge, and if they don't pay it within a certain period of time, then I believe, take them to court, and that's usually how that's handled.
I guess then, Mike, to further that question is, how do we find out about it? I mean, when they sell the property, is there an investigation that goes on there into the septic system, or how does that go?
That usually is the case. I said usually if there's a real estate transaction, one of the requirements is that one of our sanitarians goes out and investigates the system prior to sale.
And the reason I'm saying that is obviously, a plumber or a homeowner is not going to say, hey, by the way, county, we're going to put in a new septic system, but we're not going to tell you about it. We're not going to call you up and tell you we're doing it, but we're not going to get a permit. So that's where I'm coming from on that. And I guess the real thing that I'm looking for is, and it kind of, you touch on it back here, and that is, why do we need $300 to do this? And the one paragraph says, well, that continuing ed, licensing, mileage, and so forth. Can you further give us the actual breakdown of that stuff somewhere along the line?
Yes, absolutely. So that was one thing that I had actually looked at when I moved over from emergency management to the county administration, was actually looking at that particular breakdown. Just to kind of give you an idea, just for the two environmental health sanitarians, just the planning and zoning budget, we budget $15,217 just to pay out in mileage. And that's each year. So we have been averaging about anywhere from $12,000 to $13,000 just in mileage costs for those two employees. The other piece of it is looking at continuing education. You know, there are certain things that they are required to continue to have from state and federal credentials for them to be able to perform the jobs. So the continuing education, the training, and everything that goes along with it. And then also some of the administrative costs that occur through billing or just even their time. So those are certainly things that we can dive into a lot further to really figure those out. That is going to take just a little bit more time, but that is certainly something that can be done.
Well, there's a couple of numbers that I'm after, and I should have looked this up. I didn't, but the budget that Saline County allows for the sanitation part of this, do you know what that number is? Do you have that by chance? And the second part of the question would be, how much do we receive in reimbursement for fees?
So yeah, I do have a couple of those rough numbers that I can provide to you. So in 2020, total revenue, so environmental health and planning and zoning is together as one department. So we'd have to do some breakdown between what the environmental fees or revenues were versus planning and zoning revenues, but we do have that information. But we can tell you in 2020, revenues for planning and zoning, environmental health was $92,000. And in 2019 was 90,000.
That was our budget?
No, that was those were just revenues.
Oh, that was revenue.
Right.
That's pretty significant. And that would be just from fees?
Correct. That is just from permits. So that would be for permits and licenses through environmental health and sanitation and the sanitarians, as well as planning and zoning fees or revenues that were received.
Well, Hannah, that's $3,000 per, I mean, that's 3,066 total septic systems. And if you're doing it that way, there's no way we would have inspected 3,000 systems, is there?
No. So that is not just septic systems. There's well permits, septic systems, planning and zoning fees, as well as each one of the counties that we provide environmental health services to, Ottawa, Ellsworth, and Lincoln, have a contract fee that they pay Saline County for that.
Okay, well, I'm waffling here. 1 minute I'm thinking we're right on time with this $300, that we're not out of line with other counties, but on the other hand, it doesn't sound like we're coming up with really good concrete numbers for me to make a decision, and that troubles me a little bit. And the gentleman that called a few weeks ago indicated that our neighboring counties weren't charging near this much, but they're not on the list either, other than Dickinson County, which is, and McPherson, $100 and $150. So I guess.
Which other counties were you looking for? And I may be able to pull that up.
Well, I mean, Ottawa, Ellsworth, Lincoln, those are the surrounding counties that we, or are they included in on that $300?
They are included in that $300 because our staff that is employed by Saline County are the ones that do the inspections and services for all of those counties. The only ones we do not do is Dickinson and McPherson.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Tim.
I was going to say, I'd like to add to, it's when you see, like, I can use Dickinson County as an example. When we charge $150, but the sanitarian in Dickinson County is not a dedicated sanitarian. Their department has other aspects of environmental health that they have to consider. So they're in charge of, like, the solid waste transfer station, household hazardous waste, noxious weeds, all of that. So their fees that they charge on the septic side are a reflection of, they're basically trying to keep those fees down because they can raise the fees in other aspects of their operation. So it's kind of deceiving. If they didn't have those other aspects of their operation going on, they would probably be $300 as well. But it's because they're able to defer the cost, any increase in cost in other aspects of that particular operation that they have there, that they wouldn't necessarily have to raise the fees on septics. That's why they're relatively low.
Is there a typical amount of time that's spent on an inspection? I mean, or do they vary all over the place?
That's a really good question. So typically, and again, that's why we also kind of broke down the information on new septic systems versus just tank replacements, just lateral lines, etc. So for a brand new system, and then also for any type of lateral line replacements or tank and lateral line replacements, you're looking at about anywhere from 7 to 8 hours of work, depending on the complexity. And that would be just all the phone calls that you get from the contractors or the homeowners, as well as all of the different site visits that you go out there. If we're talking just a tank replacement, that takes anywhere from 3 to 4 hours. So it does take a little bit less time. But again, just when we're talking just tank replacements, we're also reinventing the wheel just a little bit with having to go back and get all the documentation as far as where the tank was at and everything, so we have that information for the future.
All right, I'll mull this over in my head, that's for sure. But I sure would like to see some of those breakdowns.
We can certainly get that information.
Thank you.
Hannah, Commissioner Weiss here. I have a couple questions for you or Tim. When it's when a house is going up for sale, there needs to be an inspection of their laterals and their tank. Do we charge for just an inspection?
Yes, we do. That is called a real estate transaction. And that fee is $300.
So, were those figures in your revenue report?
Yes, yes, sir.
But they don't show up on your numbers as far as permits that we received. It's $300 to go out there, pull the lid. The homeowner has to evacuate the tank. The homeowner has to make access, open the thing up, and our inspector comes out and does a visual of the tank to make sure that it's intact. And for that, they pay $300.
Correct. There's a little bit more that goes into it just than that, but you are correct. So anytime a real estate transaction is requested, the tank does have to be pumped. And our staff goes out there and does a thorough inspection, not only of the tank, but also takes a look at all the lateral lines and make sure everything is functioning properly. And usually that's more of a requirement for any type of loan. And we do have, there's some private sale type things, transactions that do happen that real estate transactions don't occur. But most of the time it's when somebody is purchasing a home as part of a loan process that the loan requires for an inspection. But typically it's what is in our code is what is required for any type of transaction of realty for those to be inspected.
Okay, and Commissioner Vidrickson touched on the fact that there might be some moonlighting septic tanks being swapped out that no permit was, and Tim touched upon what possibly could happen. Have we had any of those instances that we've gone out, and I guess the only time you would know that is if a sale took place and our record showed it had a 1,000-gallon tank, and they go out and inspect, and it's a 1,500-gallon tank. Well, it didn't grow. Something had to happen. Have we had that happen? And if so, how was that handled?
I believe it happens, and it's just it's one of those things that depends on actually when it happened. I said if we can determine it happened fairly recently, then it would, or from a previous owner or something. it's handled, you know, kind of on a case by case basis, I should say. We have, if I'm correct, is that they have, there are property owners that will do things kind of in the dark there, and we won't find out about it until the real estate transaction takes place. And then we have mechanisms in place to kind of mitigate that. Usually we want to find out if it's the, the previous owner had done that, or if the current owner that's selling the property, did it. Because a lot of times you'll have people who will, if the transaction was like 10 or 15 years ago, and the previous owner had put something in, and the person who's currently owns it is selling it, and that previous owner put it in, then there's not a whole lot we can do, other than just try to work with the current owner in terms of trying to resolve the discrepancy there.
Well, I question, this thing's starting to grow. I question the $300 fee on just an inspection. I guess there is some documentation that takes place, but it's just a visual. There's no mapping. There's no, and to actually assess a lateral line is, if it's wet, then there's a problem. But other than that, you don't know what's going on underground or how many feet of laterals there are. So it's just actually the septic tank that is actually being looked at, or that could actually be looked at. And I don't know, I'm getting more questions. I'm asking myself more questions than I'm getting answers, I guess.
Well, the laterals, I mean, we usually, what happens is when someone comes in for a new system, we'll usually require them to give us a diagram showing, and usually we keep those on record, and to the best of our knowledge, that's how we handle all of those types of new systems going in. Now, if there's a change or whatever that occurs, somebody does something kind of illegally or whatever. I said, like I say, we won't usually find out about it until, after the real estate, or while the real estate transaction is taking place.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Vidrickson again. It seems to me like somewhere along the line we need to somehow or another hold the plumber responsible here somehow or another. I know if a contractor here in the city or somewhere goes out and starts building a house without a permit, I mean, they're subject to some issues, I can assure you. We obviously don't have anything on the books regarding that, so maybe that's an avenue we need to kind of look at too.
Well, I've started doing that in Dickinson County for zoning issues, contractors, and these are usually, we don't do, my department doesn't deal with septics, but as for building permits, usually what I do is if a contractor builds a house, starts building a house and they haven't pulled a permit yet, I usually I have ways of finding out who's actually doing it, who the contractor is, and I can usually tag them down and track them down and have them, I'll usually know, because there's not very many builders around, so I can pretty much find out who it is that's not pulling a building permit. I don't know what it's like here, how many, as far as the number of plumbers and stuff that these guys deal with, but I think there's a way that you can address, and hold, you can hold a contractor accountable, because the contractors, to my knowledge, know, they know what's required as well as, because a lot of times the homeowner may not, but the contractor for sure does if they're licensed.
I'll go back to a comment that Commissioner Weiss made. Somewhere or another in here, I think our answer is going to be a differentiation between a new system and just an inspection. A difference in the fees. I don't know if that's possible or if it is necessary, but That seems to be where the issue with the constituents is somebody comes out and just, overlooks it and gets charged $300. I'm just guessing. I don't know. I haven't been out and looked at them. So, at any rate.
Commissioner White here. Question time. I don't know who gets to answer it or if they even can, but my question is, and I understand there's a lot of variables, but what is the cost of the average homestead, rural Saline County sewage install?
So typically for a brand new septic system for somebody that is building a house, it can be anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 depending on the complexity of it, what types of materials that they utilize, plumbers, contractor fees, etc. But that's typically what we see.
Okay, and I'm looking at a $300 permit for inspection, a fee that is basically an insurance policy. It looks like a cheap investment to me.
Mr. Chair, this is County Administrator Philip Smithane. I think it really comes back to what the commission desires. I mean, staff could do a whole lot of work and break this down, 20 different ways. If the commission desires that level of detail and would like us to pursue that, we certainly can. But it kind of, it's really kind of a policy decision for the commission at the end of the day. Are you wanting to cost recover the full amount of what we are spending to do these inspections? Or do you really want to have a fee that you think is reasonable in consideration of neighboring jurisdictions, sort of what the market will bear, and and we would effectively subsidize a little bit of that fee through other revenues? I mean, that's really the question that this comes down to. And so we could certainly, perform an exhaustive, time study, track, how much time it takes to drive to the average inspection, and how, there are all those costs that could potentially be in it, but we want to make sure that we're providing the commission information that's actionable for you, that you actually can take to make a decision.
And this is Commissioner Sparks, and I've lived in rural Saline County for over 40 years. And just in the last, probably 4 years, we've had 3 of my neighbors out where I live have had to have new septic tanks put in. And I want to commend our planning zoning, our helpers out there that are pertain to this $300 fee. To me, it's one of them situations where a lot of these people, it's like almost like they're doing the engineering of this project. Yeah, they have these plumbers that do septic tanks that know how to do this, but these guys come out and make sure that this is all done right. And it's like, we just hired here a consultant here to manage our installation over at the Expo Center, a manager of doing some work. And I look at it as that's what's going on here, is that these employees are going out, they're first telling the consumer that, yes, hey, this has not been replaced in 40 years. Yes, you're going to have to put in a new septic tank. Whether it's even been working, all of a sudden it's like we have these people out here that I know, like myself, you have people that have been there for all these years that retired there, and their house and their septic tanks works fine when you have one or two people live there. Now you have a house full of 4 kids coming in. Things change a little bit, and you have that all has to come into play. The $300 to me is just a part of doing the business on that side of it, to making sure that what is there is going to function right for that family. So I don't have an issue with the $300 at all. But that's just my intake on it. Thank you. Any other comments?
Commissioner Vidrickson, and I've been listening to this and thinking about it and deciphering it. I've heard it from constituents. Commissioner White brought up a good point in terms of the percentage of cost to the home itself, and listening to our administrator and how he takes this apart. It doesn't look like we're out of line, I guess, after all. I mean, I'm still on the side of the constituents, but $300 doesn't seem to be an inordinate amount of money for the service that we're going through, and what as you, I think one of the commissioners said, the insurance policy on your septic system. So I'll leave it at that, I guess.
Okay. Well, thank you for your information there, Mr. Richardson. Any other comments?
I'm okay with everything, as appreciate the information that shows that we are in line with other places, and that's kind of what I wanted to hear.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for your input. Next item.
Item number 4, Planning and Zoning Update with Tim Hamilton, Planning and Zoning Administrator.
Good morning, Tim. One more time.
Good morning. Good morning again.
Yes.
This is I do an annual review. I try to give kind of a review of what the whole previous year and where we're at, up to year to date in 21. And so the planning board back in last year, I said we held 5 public hearings to consider basically 5 conditional use permit applications and 2 transfer of development rights. In November of last year, the planning board started the update process for the comprehensive plan by considering language recommended by the Fort Riley to Smoky Hill unmanned aircraft study to be included in Chapter 4, Section 9 of the county plan. As you can see under the item 1, which is the table for new construction, we had residential homes in 2020 were 14, and so far since January 1st of this year, we've had one new home. The replacement homes broken down is we had 1 replacement home last year, 4 residential additions, 34 accessory structures, 3 commercial projects, and that would include adding, cell towers and adding a new cell tower dish. And so that comes to a total of 60 permits that we had last year for planning and zoning. And year to date, we've had a total of 7. So as far as what we have plans for in the future, the planning board conducted its first public hearing via Zoom in January, and it was a success. Staff will continue to schedule Zoom meetings open to the public as the COVID-19 situation warrants. The planning board does intend to continue pursuing the comprehensive plan update through 2021, though limited to in-person hearings as health safety conditions will allow. The budget update for us kind of touching on a little of what Hannah spoke about earlier, which was our total revenue in 2020 was $92,680, and broken down, that's $4,950 for zoning, $87,730 for environmental services, and revenue year to date for 21 is, and this is since January 31st, I believe it is, $9,000 total. That would be $500 for zoning fees and $8,500 for environmental service fees. And so that's that basically breaks down last year and kind of where we're at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tim. We'll keep them busy for this year, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Any other comments by commissioners?
This Commissioner White, another question. Could you give us a brief overview, Tim, in regards to TDR's transfer development rights and the process for those and the meanings behind it?
Okay, transfer of development rights is a mechanism that Saline County has included to assist those individuals that have, because we discourage development in a floodplain. There are some development rights that might be in a floodplain that we're trying to, discourage anyone from developing, and so usually we give the option of allowing that property owner that has that development right to sell that development right to, or transfer that development right to another property that would like to build. So sometimes, a lot of times, these the receiving property doesn't necessarily have to be 80 acres. I mean, we've historically, because the way it's supposed to work is you have one building right for every 80 acres. But as long as it is a legal split, I said you can transfer one development right to a property, provided that there's no other primary residential structures or no other housing on there. In that case, they would have to split that particular parcel in half to allow that one development right that they're transferring from the floodplain into this other parcel before we would allow a building permit to be issued.
I see. Do you have any idea what the value of a transfer development right is?
The value of the right, as far as the cost on it, is that what you're saying? Okay. I do not know. It's based on whatever the market value is for the going rate is. I have no idea what that would be. That's a realtor would probably know better than I would as to how much those go for. But usually we don't find out about it until somebody says, "Hey, look, I'd like to do a transfer of development rights." By then, it's already a done deal. So
I see. Okay, I appreciate that info. And could you give us a brief overview in regards to the 4 cell towers?
Okay, the cell towers that went in. This was from the provider was NextLink. And they've got 2 that went up that required conditional use permit, and those 2 conditional use permits were approved. And then you had one additional that we had here in Saline County last year that went in on I believe it was in Brookville on a silo that was existing, so they didn't have to go through a conditional use permit on that because it was already, was on a structure that was high enough to, and that's why we do the conditional use permits, is to assure that the height is, so if it's a new tower, it'll go through a conditional use permit, but if they want to put it on a silo, our regulations allow them to do that without having to go through the conditional use. The other tower that's coming up is going to be in April, and that will go through the planning board in April, the April first meeting in April, and then have once that's done, that's all we have so far. I mean, I've got 2 other ones that I'm dealing with from that same company, that NextLink, in Dickinson County. And so you'll have to forgive me. Sometimes I get the two confused because I'm dealing with all three. I'm dealing with the one in April here, and then I've got two others next month in Dickinson County. So from the same company. So, so that's where we're at right now. And I asked NextLink. I said, what's your status as far as, you know, the next several months? Is this going to be the last tower you put up, you know, for in Saline County? They said yeah, for now. So, but we'll wait and see what happens. These things tend to, you know, kind of creep up on us, and we're usually the last ones to know that they're planning anything because they never let us know. So, but that's it. April is going to be the fourth one that's going to be going up, and so that's all I got on it so far. So.
All righty. I appreciate the info.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other commissioners have any comments or questions? Okay. Go to next item.
Item number 5, commissioners' comments.
Any comments by the commissioners? Next item.
Item number 6, announcements.
Don't have any announcements. Is there any announcements by any other commissioners? Any other business? No further business. Saline County Board of Commissioners meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for attending.